ourselves to at least get 8 hours of sleep a night. So why can't we devote more time to being in prayer? The Greek word used by Paul to convey the devotion to prayer which we must have is parouskaterio, which means to attend constantly. This is to consistently show strength which prevails in spite of the difficulties that are experienced. To continue to pray with intense effort. To attend with great perseverance to all the exercises. To adhere closely to the desired outcome. What Paul is saying is to be active in all manner, in all times, filled with energy, devoted to prayer, and having a desire to commune with the living God on a regular basis. This is just what Jesus instructed his disciples to do in Luke 18, verse 1. He tells them, always be praying. Always be praying. Embrace the time to pray when it's presented to you. Do not shy away from the opportunity to pray. Always be willing to engage in prayer. Paul stresses this in his closing instructions to the church in Ephesus in Ephesians 6:18, where he says, and pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. And so the purpose that Paul wants the church to understand about being devoted to prayer is that it is important. Prayer is something which we have been instructed to do, and we must always be doing it. As Paul says to the church of Thessaloniki in 1 Thessalonians 5:17, continue to pray without ceasing. That there is no time limit to prayer. All of these things point to the need to focus, to devote ourselves on the things of prayer, and to keep at it at all times. That is, that we are willing to put our energy into. We're willing to put our focus and our time and our attention into, rather than just relegating it to a moment of time that we feel is that we are free to do it. That, oh, I have a moment, I'll pray. Oh, I'm in the car, I'm going to somewhere, this is a great time to pray. We must always be devoted to it. And focusing on it, putting our energy into always looking for it. That is, we are called to commune with God often and regularly. And that we should be spending a significant amount of our time and energy praying and talking to God. But in order for us to be fully devoted to it, we have to kind of change our mindset a little bit. Change our mindset from I have time to do it now to a time that I'm actively going to put myself into the act of prayer. I'm not just going to do it because I have free time. I'm going to do it because I need to. I need to be in prayer. I need to be with God in this moment. That we are going to stick with our devotion to prayer as much as possible. Regardless of how busy our day might get, or if we just don't have time for it, that we're willing to pray. And we are devoted to prayer. That we're not going to give up prayer because we have a busy day or we just do not have time for it. We are called to pray as frequently as possible. And so we have been given access to this incredible source of power, and therefore we must become intimate with it and no longer treat it as a stranger. Because prayer is important in our walk. And so one of the struggles which kind of gets in the way of our devotion to prayer for many people is what are we going to go about praying for? And it seems like a silly reason to make an excuse for why you don't have a reason to pray. And which is why Paul says, be watchful and thankful. To be watchful for, you can always find something and see something to pray about. There are things that we can see that we can pray for. As Paul says in Philippians 4:6, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. In every situation. However, because we have this great blanket thing of praying in every situation and praying for all things, there springs about an uncertainty in what to pray for has led us to something I think is very interesting. And something Paul in his wisdom knew that was going to happen in advance, and why he kind of added it in these final instructions in verses 3 and 4. And which would later become evident later in this day and age when we discover more about how people pray and what people are more likely to pray for. It is interesting that the Barna Research Group pulled people and asked them what their top 10 things that they prayed for. And the surprising number of the things that they prayed for is there is thanksgiving and blessings, which we see in Philippians 4:6, pray with thanksgiving. But the study also found that that was the number one thing, prayer and thanksgiving. Outside of that, the other 9 out of the 10, people were more likely to pray for things that regarded the self. That is, we tend to pray more about our finances, our families, our health, and even our sleeping. Sleeping was up there in the top 10. Now, nothing is wrong with praying for those things, because that falls under everything and in all circumstances. But what Paul had the foresight to add in there is that you pray for yourself, but also make sure that you're doing the one thing that most people are forgetting to pray for. To pray for others. That is why Paul says, pray for me, pray that I might carry forth the message with clarity. He's adding himself in and instructing them not only to pray for themselves, but to pray for others. In fact, that the Barna Research Group found that out of the top 10 reasons, things that people pray for, they find that only 34% of those polled said that they would pray on a regular basis for other people. Which, by the way, if you were to look at the graph of what people most frequently pray for, that was number 9 out of 10. It barely beat out getting more sleep. But then there raises the question, because of